What is the most NSFW thing you have ever seen experienced while at work? I worked at a Boy Scout summer camp as a kid. Our trading post guy apparently picked up a Scoutmaster's daughter during family visit day and was nailing her in the stockroom when the camp director noticed the lights were on. This was just before evening campfire and was therefore strange. Camp director walks in and kinda says hello. He apparently heard nothing. Trading post guy pokes his head out from the stock room and says, "I guess I'm fired, aren't I?" Then the girl pokes her head around the door frame and the manager says, "Yes you are." I went to National Jamboree years later and was telling this story, and one of the other scouts I was with pulled me aside afterwards and said, "You weren't supposed to tell that story, man." My response was, "What? How do you know that?" "That was my sister, man." A few years back I was at work. I'm a bug man. At an apartment complex. I walked into the office to sign in and everyone immediately asks me if I want to see something. We jump in the golf cart and drive over to a ground floor unit on the other side of the grounds. They excitedly open the door and I walk in. In a flash I run out and vomit all over the bushes. The smell hit me like a physical blow. It was sickly sweet and overpoweringly pungent at the same time. There was a pull-out couch in the living room visible as soon as you walked in, with the bed already pulled out. On the white sheets was an obviously human-shaped stain of brownish goo that was still wet. On the pillow was a scalp. The entire back of the man's head had sloughed off when they picked up his body. It was horrible, but nowhere as bad as the story of his death. He had died, according to the coroner that removed him, a couple of weeks before. He was a 40-year-old man who lived with his elderly mother who needed constant care due to Alzheimer's. The people in the office noticed that during the last week their lunches were disappearing from their fridge in the office break room, so they kept watch to try to catch the thief. A few hours before I got there they finally caught the culprit. It was the elderly woman from the apartment we went to. She was just hungry. When they took her home they discovered her son's body and called the authorities. It gets even worse. She had Alzheimer's. She had been living 4 weeks with his body. She must have discovered his body hundreds or even thousands of times during those weeks, and forgot each time. I watched a nurse pull wads of crumpled up money and bath salts out of a guy's butt and had a drunk girl throw a used tampon at me. Working in an ER though isn't fair for this subject. Also wears Mystics and BJs at work. Worked at a strip club for 2 years in college. I'm a guy. Managers would duck the girls in the office sometimes or get head from them under the desk and in exchange waive their house fees. I've seen NFL players throw up all over the bar. I've hid sex countless times in the VIP area. Not an uncommon thing. I've had to clean up jizz and condoms from the VIP. I got paid well. I've seen a stripper passed out in her own puke and for some reason a tampon was also in the puke. I've seen dancers fall asleep while dancing and grinding on the pole. Piddleheads. Titties. Lots of titties. Happy ones. Sad ones. Little ones. Big ones. Real ones. Fakes ones. Customers doing blow and pills out in the open. If you were a regular, you do what you want. Worked at Babies R Us and this woman puts her baby down on a dresser with a table. It was for show, not to use, and she started to change her baby's nasty diaper and got it all over the dresser. She then goes to our furniture desk, where we order it, sit down and starts breastfeeding. Not 30 seconds go by and these 3 teenagers walk around the corner and of course they look. She goes off on them cussing and calling them perverts. We have a room in the back with couches and tables for this kind of stuff. I used to work for a catering company that did on-site food preparation, serving, and so forth. So many of my work days there were spent at people's houses while they had parties. Lots of NSFW stuff. But the one that really stuck with me was when a teenage girl did a dance recital at her uncle's birthday party. Nothing so creepy as a scantily clad 15-year-old dry humping the air while all of her male relatives stand around wolf whistling. Horse barn I used to work at. Went into a backfield to get horses. Caught a guy ducking a horse. That was his last day working there. We got this new grease removing stuff that was really neat. You just sprayed it on from a compressed sprayer and the grease more or less evaporated. It also got super cold, so we started spraying each other's legs with it as a joke. Then we read the OSHA book on it. Side effects ranged from death to serious mental issues. We stopped playing that game. I seen people served meat while at Taco Bell that was nowhere near ready yet. They mixed frozen meat with bun water. I don't believe it was anywhere near 165. People pooping in the fitting rooms. Happens more than you'd think. Work at a sports store and I was closing at the time. I went to clean the bathrooms but a lady asked if she could go real quick. Few minutes later she comes out. I go in and there's it smeared everywhere. Whoever you are, duck you. I walked in on my co-worker having sex with his girlfriend. I remember that I needed something from one of the rooms. So I went to the room and opened the door and there they were grunting and moaning. They were so into it that they didn't even notice me. I immediately shut the door, went back to my chambers, and slumped in my chair. To describe how I felt, it was honestly jealousy. I had always kinda had a thing for him, but I didn't realize it until that moment. It should have been me with him, not her. I began to imagine myself with him, ripping of his cloak, our cocks rubbing together, sucking his tits. I suddenly felt a tear on my cheek. At that point I knew what I had to do. I couldn't be near him anymore. The pain was too much to bear. The next time I saw him I sent him to Old Town to become a meester. Edit. I have lost my gold virginity. Thank you kind stanger. Cute cute. But not my anal virginity cute on or no cutien. I was on a submarine when I was in the Navy. On my first underway, there was a chief who was retiring. And this was his last underway. He stood his last watch butt-ass naked, nothing but his shoes, belt and dosimeter. So the skipper got wind of this and did what any self-respecting submariner would do in that situation. Fire and flooding drills in the engine room. Half the crew was aft in firefighting ensemble watching this old chief flopper cooking around the engine room, sweating his D off. Good times. I saw the guy use a forklift to lift another forklift because his forklift didn't go high enough. My biology teacher at school was once teaching us about the types of drugs. She started explaining about suppositories. She started telling us about her experience in a hospital where she had to shove a suppository inside her. Word for word she said, "I told my mom to do it for me. I don't want to shove it in the wrong hole." We are just sitting there perplexed with this story, thinking what should we do? Laugh, nod, or be disgusted? I actually told a little story about getting a blowjob at work earlier tonight, but that isn't even the winner here. A coworker and I caught the owner of the company ducking some young blonde girl in his office on night shift once. It was ducking awesome. Doing IT stuff. Found naked pictures of a girl on a coworker's computer. Girl was the girl I had dated. Computer was her stepfather's. Working at Leeds United. Once caught two teenagers shagging on a piano behind a half-drawn curtain in the banqueting hall. It was their prom, I think. I worked at Waffle House. Went outside to have cigarette on 2 separate occasions, seen a couple ducking in their car in the parking lot. The first time was a co-worker, it was at night, she came back in sweaty, hair matted, went straight to the bathroom. The second time was at like 10 AM. No tinted windows. Chick was just furiously riding that cowboy like no tomorrow. I just shook my head both times. Didn't know what to say or do, or if I should say or do anything. I gave one of my co-workers a blowjob during lunch. Getting blown in a cubicle in a room of 300 cubicles just prior to opening for the day. My time to shine. A lady came into the restaurant right at opening. She didn't want to eat but just get drunk, which didn't happen often because the place I work at is a fancier spot. Anyways, she sat at the bar for 4 hours tossing back drinks, and she was hammered. Around 8, a local chubby guy who had been chatting it up with her for a while convinced her to go outside for a smoke. Well, a half hour later these two are nowhere to be found, but her purse was still at the bar, so we knew they didn't leave. Then the phone rings. A guy on the line asks if a lady is there, and upon him giving a description I quickly realized he was looking for the drunk woman. I told him to hold on because she had stepped outside. Well, when I walked out there, I saw her riding the local fat man in the driver's seat of one of their cars. Laughing, I wandered back inside and told the guy I hadn't been able to find her. He said, "Well, this is her husband and I can't find her. If you see her, can you have her give me a call?" I work in a hospital, so I'll just go with the most NSFW thing I saw today. I'm minding my business, cleaning an exam room, and an old fella just walks in with a robe and an IV pole. He's like, oh yeah, I might change my robe in here. I'm like, nope. But he's already got his robe off. Then he realized he can't change his robe because he is attached to the IV. Puts his old robe back on and walks out. That was not good naked. Student teacher here. I walked in on 2 students getting it on. This would be rather vanilla, but there was blood ducking everywhere. Turns out due to a mix of some rather adult forceful penetration and a certain time of the month, it was as if we were in a 80s slasher film. I called the nurse and the principal ASAP. Keep in mind, this was week 2 of my student teaching. Edit. A word. Work IT. Server becomes infected with a Trojan. Inspect server. Notice a roaming profile that is causing the issue. Issue is something the user downloaded to their desktop. Also on the desktop is a folder entitled Nudies which do, in fact, contain all that employees' nude pictures and videos that they were sending to their boyfriend. Come on folks, at least hide the selfies. Saw my supervisor not wearing proper PPE for the task. Well, as a hotel room attendant, lots of sics, lots of aftermath from sics. Act, you know the works. I guess it's not the most super ducked up thing, but occasionally I clean businessmen rooms and come across their wedding ring. Usually don't think much of it till I come across lady underwear and I make up stained pillows. I always like giving them an uncomfortable stare if I see them return to the room. Remember, housekeepers see everything. Former army, getting to be the urinalysis observer, meat gazing all morning long. Quite recently actually, an elderly customer collapsed from blood loss in our car park. Open wound from recent surgery on his leg plus blood thinning meds made quite the scene. Luckily there was an off-duty emergency room nurse on hand to help us until paramedics arrived. Edit. Till. NSFW mean 6 only. And Redditors are ducking weird. Worked in the lingerie department of a big department store. A woman returned 2 nightgowns that were covered in semen. We had a policy that all returns were accepted no matter what, so I had to take them back. When I was in high school I worked as a janitor for an airport. People would ditch drugs regularly in trash or in the washrooms. Also, since I had keys to private conference rooms I'd use them to duck in. I work in the sex toy industry, and I have to watch porn all day. Worked at a multi-store car dealership chain with close to 20 separate manufacturers. The GM of one of the stores was notorious for hiring people very unqualified for the job, and also hiding things on his books. Anyway, turns out that the woman he hired to schedule appointments for service was actually his in-house prostitute. He met her by paying her $4,600. Apparently wanted to keep her on retainer, so he gave her a job. Also, she was given a free car to drive around as she pleased. I never really witnessed anything myself. Never saw anything sexual done in person. I was in charge of auditing their emails, and there was certainly some risque things in there. The woman also had no clue what business attire was, so she wore her work clothes to the dealership for her 9 to 5. Needless to say, several male employees enjoyed the eye candy. Where I work, this couple, both over 60, were dry, I guess wet humping, in the hot tub. Banged in the walk-in, and the boss's office, and the parking lot. Just a whole lot of banging at this pizza place when it was just us two. Last year I came into work overnights and we were soon sent to the rear of my store to condone off a bathroom. Inside the bathroom a man was naked, laying on the floor with magazines spread out around him and he was jerking off. My manager was worried if customers might see and especially children. My manager told him they had called the police and I heard the guy, who was really loud by the way, reply, "Don't worry, I am almost finished." Apparently he had done this a few times before and always escaped. Finally they caught him this time and he was arrested. He also sprinted out of the store naked with his clothes in his hands. I went in the office to find evidence that the owner was jerking it in there. He was. I worked late one evening and caught a couple less than male and female more than doing the deed standing upright in a dark area between the side of the employee refrigerator and the wall. They had no idea that I saw them. I left as discreetly as possible. I was a crew chief, aircraft maintainer, on C-130s. A 25K forklift, meaning it can hold 25K, not weighs that much itself, was helping with the offload of an aircraft one night. The loadmaster for the flight usually stands in between the tires, right where the driver gets in, to help guide the vehicle. This night, he must have slipped, because he went down and the front tire ran right over his legs. I was at the nose of the plane, starting my inspections, but I'll never forget his screams, nor how his legs looked afterwards. Luckily emergency crews got there quick, and the guy definitely lived, but it looked excruciating. You have the opportunity to see a lot of dumb NSFW in the military, and I saw my fair share, but that one sticks out quite a bit. Worked in a tech startup and one particular guy was unhappy about reporting to a woman, so he would just read hentai at work. Didn't say anything, but when he returned from the bathroom, I just went, "That was fast, your poor wife." Didn't happen again. A long time ago when I was a lifeguard at a public pool, I had to kick a person that was born as both a male and female out for wearing a bikini. It was the most uncomfortable conversation of my life, but his junk was just hanging out at the bottom and there were little kids everywhere. We have a guy at work that uses the urinal with his pants around his knees. Walking into the bathroom to see some middle-aged guy's bare ass is always a surprise. Not my work, but the neighborhood pool I frequented when I was younger. I had forgotten something at the pool after closing hours, so I came back after about 15 minutes. I walk past the bathroom doors. There's no doors on them, and glance in as I walk past and see the lifeguard banging his girlfriend on one of the folding sunbathing chair things. I run past and hope they didn't see me. I grab whatever I came to get, and then run past again while looking. I was only 14 at the time, so I didn't really know what was going on, and they didn't see or notice me. I left. The next day at school I told my friend on the bus who also goes to the same pool. I guess he went and told the lifeguard, because a couple days later I go to the pool and the lifeguard comes up to me and asks, "Hey, so I heard you saw me the other night. You're not going to tell anyone, are you?" I told him that I wouldn't and that I honestly didn't care all that much. After that, though, he would always let my friends in for free. We had to have guest passes for non-neighborhood residents, so that was pretty cool. I used to work at a large computer retail store. We had several lower end models in a separate area from the rest. Least to say that from the floor of the department you can't really see who is over there except the top of their heads. Well, there was this one man that always came in, literally every day. We called him Scooter and we didn't like him. He was disrupting other customers trying to look at the computers, but we never knew what he was doing over there. We tried to avoid him because he smelled awful. I found out one day he was watching porn and beating the one-eyed gopher like it stole his money in the store. Well, he was arrested. I still can't get that image out of my mind. TL. Doctor Quarter, presumably, homeless guy masturbating in a computer store. I worked at a computer repair shop. One day this guy comes in with his computer and says it has a pretty nasty virus on it. Typical routine, right? I wish it was, because my boss walked in on me a minute after I had started up the computer. But the virus was one of those old ones that just constantly filled up your computer screen with porn advertisements. His response? "I see you finally started to venture out into the world there and stop being so innocent." Probably the woman who went on a racist rant when we didn't let her know her prescription was ready, which we did, at the pharmacy I worked at. This obese, redneck woman came to get her prescription but the insurance didn't take or something for whatever reason. So she hands us her insurance card and someone goes to work on it while she sits down on the bench and waits. Finally, they get the insurance to go through and call her name to let her know it's ready. I don't know if she had stepped away to shop, which a lot of people do, or just didn't hear, but she didn't come to get it. So we put it in the rack and went about our business. I guess she got tired of waiting and finally came up to the counter asking for her prescription. We tell her it's ready and she's really pissed off that we didn't let her know. The girl working the counter was a Filipino woman who had been there for years. She was really nice and never had a problem with anyone else. The woman starts screaming at her and calls her a lazy ducking Mexican or something like that. When the girl explained she was Filipino, the woman started screaming again and said that all Filipinos are whores. The Philippines is a country of whores, etc. She just berates this poor girl until one of the pharmacists steps in. She keeps yelling and screaming at the pharmacist and keeps calling the girl a whore and going on about Filipinos. Finally the pharmacist said she was banned from the pharmacy but still wouldn't shut the duck up. We called the managers up there and finally got her to leave. They banned her from the store. The poor Filipino girl was upset and had to step aside into the back room to cry for a little bit. Helped break up a high school fight where girls pulled each other's tops down. I was very careful about hand placement. Guy smacked an aerosol can with a crowbar and it sprayed another guy in the face. Good thing for our wash station. I used to work at Geekswood. On my first day a woman came in screaming that we didn't fix her computer and it was still infected and slow etc. I put it up on the bench with her and was looking through it. Determined that it had been formatted. Shocking for Geekswood. I know. So this was likely a new infection. I offered to help her figure out what files she needed backed up. Mistake number 1. And offered to do it right at the counter. Mistake number 2. We start going though the computer, and for those that remember back to Windows XP, it very helpfully had this prompt to unhide hidden folders before deletion. So I, being an idiot, selected yes and opened her 11-year-old son's folder of hentai, tentacle and other misc porn for all the onlookers in the vicinity to see. I deleted them and calmed her down again, only to stumble on another hidden folder somewhere else in the documents folder of her niece's webcam exploits. At that point she started crying and I deleted them and tried to move on. It was at that point that I figured out that getting into IT has its parallels to being a phycologist. You get to hear and see a lot of what happens in people's private time, but it's a pretty big, and occasionally disgusting, responsibility. We only had the one toilet where I used to work. When I went in to take a leak there was obvious spludge against the upraised seat. I cleaned it with a fistful of toilet paper because I didn't want to be blamed for it. A body that was sat upright in a sofa for a week. It had expanded and its intestinal contents had burst out and rotted through the sofa onto the floor. On the other end of the sofa was man with diabetic legs coming in and out of an alcoholic withdrawal fits. He'd been looking at his dead wife for a week, rotting as he came in and out of consciousness. I'm a landlord's property manager.